Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. I do hope you're doing remarkably well and keeping lovely and cool wherever you are with the hot, hot weather. Or if in fact you're very cold, keeping lovely and warm. Don't forget to get that perfect drink to accommodate the temperature of where you are. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, the name is Dawson. My Bigfoot encounter happened to me in 2013 when I was about 23 years old at the time. I grew up and was raised in Solana Beach in San Diego, California, which I believe has been ranked as the 7th best place to live in the United States. So I certainly consider myself very privileged to have grown up and to reside in such an idyllic part of the world with vast stretches of exquisite white sandy beaches that go on for an eternity, tall statuesque palm trees with their perfectly straight trunks embellished by resplendent emerald green feathery heads, the beautiful stretches of aquamarine blue ocean with fabulous, fabulous surf that thunders and crashes against the rocks with white foaming spray fizzing across the golden ground, the undulating waves rolling backwards and forwards again and again. I was very lucky that our family lived in one of those contemporary-style beach homes, perched on the highest elevation of a rugged cliff face, with seamless floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked those spectacular panoramic sea views, something that you can never ever tire of. Growing up, we spent so much time on the beach, surfing, playing ball, sunbathing, and just walking our 2 Scottish terriers, Rags and Wilbur, across the beach. 2 dogs that loved the beach even more than we did. I went to junior and middle school in this part of the world with my brother Carson, and although we've been overseas a few times as a family, I'm ashamed to admit that I had not ventured further afield in North America, so to speak. But I'm glad to tell you that that was about to change for me. My story that I want to share with you and your listeners begins when I was taking my girlfriend Farah to West Virginia for a couple of weeks' holiday. I'm not sure exactly why we chose West Virginia, but we did. We hired a white Jeep, visiting many exciting spots, choosing to stay at some interesting, charming, sublime locations on our trip. We visited places like the Blackwater Falls State Park. We even went whitewater rafting, which was very exhilarating, if not a terrifying experience for the both of us. One day as we were on our Virginian adventure, we were desirous to book a picturesque fairy tale cabin in the woods, as we both fancied staying in a romantic retreat for a couple of nights, enjoying the benefits of a crackling, cosy indoor log fire, surrounded by the idyllic woodland scenery of statuesque tall trees, undulating green valleys, not to mention a stunning silvery stream that rarely clinched the deal as far as I was concerned, as it was also a perfect spot for a touch of fishing, so I thought at the time. My girlfriend was so excited about the breathtaking picturesque views she had seen on the gleaming brochure, depicting these adorable, magical-looking wooden cabins that were on offer, nestled in the very heart of the woods. They were so postcard perfect that they seemed impossible to resist. I could tell by the excited expression on Farah's cute little pixie face that staying in such a magical, whimsical setting was a big deal for her. So refusing her this fabulous opportunity was not an option for me, as I wanted to please my girlfriend. "Oh, please," she begged me, "let's stay in one of those gorgeous cabins. Oh, it'll be so romantic. Go on, please, let's do it. It'll be brilliant. I couldn't think of anything I'd rather do. Imagine it, cosy fires in the hearth, warm cups of hot cocoa, trips to the woods. We'd never do anything like that here in California." "I'll see what I can do," I assured her. The middle-aged lady I called on my cell phone asked me if I was sure I wanted to book the cabin. She made such a ridiculous song and dance about it, almost as if booking a cabin was a huge deal. It was a couple of days, for goodness sake, not a lifetime's worth of timeshares in Hawaii. "I've only one cabin left. The others are all booked up," she told me. "That's fine," I said. "I'll take it." "Well, you do realise that this particular cabin is haunted. I need to warn you about that. I tend to just let it out to paranormal researchers, ghost hunters who are interested in that kind of thing, I'm afraid. I'm not sure it would be appropriate for you, as a romantic retreat, that is." "Look," I said, "I really don't believe in that kind of stuff anyway, so I'm very happy to take it." "If you're sure," said the lady, "I really don't want you to regret your decision." "I won't," I assured her. "It's booked," I told Farah. She looked thrilled. "Oh, I'm over the moon," she said, jumping up and down for joy like an excitable puppy dog. I decided not to mention anything about the haunting business that the lady had warned me about. In truth, I didn't believe in ghosts or things that go bump in the night anyway. As far as I was concerned, it was a fabulous deal. The kindly woman had given me 10% discount off the price, which I thought was a little strange, but I wasn't about to complain. I didn't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, if you know what I mean. My GPS lost its signal, trying to locate the cabin, which meant that for a long while Farah and I were driving around in chaotic circles, getting hopelessly lost. It was an exceedingly remote area, surrounded by rocky outcrops, mountainous valleys, and pretty pastoral fields where horses were grazing, galloping, and frolicking. Soon we found ourselves driving down a very bumpy, precipitous dirt road, where the pebbles were beating and thrashing violently against the undercarriage of the jeep. It wobbled precariously, bouncing all over the place. Finally we took a right turning at the swift fork in the road, where we reached a cattle gate with a sign that read, "Red Fox, cabin number 20. "That will be our cabin," I said, beaming at Farah. "I think we've found the place." The turning in the road swept downwards towards a large clearing in the valley, filled with clusters of towering statuesque red maple trees. Then nestled in the heart of this wooded sanctuary was quite literally the prettiest whimsical fairy tale Hansel and Gretel cabin that I've ever seen, with sensational views that overlooked a meandering stream, with a strong, powerful current, where the water crashed thunderously against the sculptural rocky outcrops. It was magnificent. Our jeep drew up to the parking bay of the cabin. We successfully frightened off half a dozen white-tailed deer that had been resting close to the water's edge. "Oh, it's so beautiful! It's like stepping into a real-life fairy tale. It's so enchanting." The 2-story chalet-style cabin was so rustic and beautiful. It quite literally took my breath away. It was built from the finest wood, was exceedingly spacious, with floor-to-ceiling glass sliding windows opening into a sprawling entertainment area. There were grand stone fireplaces in every room for those cosy, crackling winter fires on icy cold evenings. The swanky, colourful furnishings were cushy, snug, yet at the same time classy and stylish, designed for luxury with comfort in mind. No expense was spared. There was a sweeping ornate staircase leading up to the upper floor, with a wonderful wraparound balcony. Balcony possessed wooden balustrades overlooking beautiful views over the stream. There were 4 bedrooms to choose from. We chose one on the top floor, as the fabulous 4-poster wooden bed won over our hearts. It was resplendently arrayed with colourful cushions, along with sumptuous cotton bedding. Before long, Farah and I had unpacked all our food supplies, stashing them away in the cute little kitchen that maximised its efficiency by its cutting-edge technology and design. It was fitted with propane gas cookers, along with a gas refrigerator. We lit a large crackling fire in the wonderful stone fireplace, as it was getting exceedingly chilly outside, as the night finally rolled in. Very soon a bright, cheerful fire enveloped the living area with a cosy warmth. The bright red flames flickered, crackled and whooshed. We lay on the soft cushioned settees, lapping up the warmth like 2 lizards on a sunny rock. Soon we were fast asleep. All of a sudden I awoke with a start, to the sound of mischievous children chuckling and giggling. I could hear the sound of their feet racing up and down the staircase of the cabin. Now I want to stress that I am exceedingly cynical about the paranormal, but these children's animated voices were coming from inside the cabin. Of this there was no doubt in my mind. I could physically feel their rambunctious, playful energy flying directly past me, as they seemed to dash across the room as if playing hide-and-seek. I looked around the living area. I could see nothing and no one there, but I could feel the presence of those kids in a profound way. Farah appeared to be blindly oblivious as to what was going on. Her face was serene, peaceful. She lay across the couch in a fetal position, snoring rather delicately. I suddenly noticed her long blonde hair was being lifted in the air by an unseen pair of hands. The hair was being braided. I was absolutely dumbfounded. It was the oddest, most peculiar thing that I have ever observed in my entire life. I'm sure my eyes were like saucers, my chin was dropping to the ground, hardly daring to believe what I was perceiving. Now I was certain I must be dreaming. I rubbed my eyes with disbelief. Was this really happening to me? For the very first time in my life, I found the cynical, sceptical, doubtful side of my character was truly being challenged. I was being forced to re-examine everything I thought I knew. "Oh, that's so nice," came Farah's semi-conscious sleepy voice. "I do love it when you play with my hair." She clearly believed I was playing with her long mane of blonde locks, but nothing could be further from the truth. The chuckling continued for a while. Then the cheerful, buoyant, spirited children's voices turned into frightened, panicky whispers. I'm almost certain I picked up an alarmed little boy's voice whispering, "It's Mr. Pepper! Quickly! Hide! He's coming! He's coming! It's Mr. Pepper!" Those two kids were terrified out of their wits. In a trice, the atmosphere changed from light to dark, almost as quickly as a second hand on a clock. The air became thick, clammy, oppressive. The light, happy, mellow feeling in the room shifted, melted, faded away like a subtle smell on the wind. I sensed a very heavy, inauspicious, pretentious presence clattering down the staircase in a clumsy, hefty way, as if the presence was of a rotund man wearing steel-toed leather boots. I could hear the thump, 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 thump. My hair stood on end as electric spasms of terror snaked down my spine in waves. The strangest, most peculiar thing happened. An icy coldness swept across the entire living area like a blustering Arctic wind with sub-zero temperatures. I could even see the misty vapour of my own breath before my face. My poor body began to shiver, shake, tremble with cold. My fingers almost became numb. The fire's warmth had been sucked away as if red coals had now turned to ice. The baleful footsteps kept moving slowly, deliberately, intentionally down that staircase until finally they reached the bottom. That was when I felt a sizable, menacious presence that was so formidable. It took up the entire room like an 800-pound man taking over your seat on an international flight. It felt like that there was no room left for me to breathe. I could smell the stench of rum enveloping the air as if I was around a drunken sailor. The noisy boots clompered around the living area, occasionally stopping, as if the presence was looking for something or someone. I was certain that the spectral figure of Mr. Pepper was trying to find those poor children. Whoever he was, he appeared drunken, disorderly, aggressive, and mad as a hatter. The invisible entity's movements were cloddish. No wonder those kids were afraid of him. His energy was evil to its very core. I sat there, frozen to the spot, barely able to move a muscle. I was paralysed by fear. This doomful, evil, inebriated presence was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. You knew it was there, but you couldn't physically see it. I wanted to scream, cry out, yell even, but my dry, scratchy throat was so parched, nothing came out of my mouth. I seemed locked in an immobilised, paralysed state, rather like an ice statue at a banquet. It was a very unpleasant, haunting sensation. The next thing I heard was the rattling of the inside lock. The key turned. The door opened. The large, intrusive presence paced out of the cabin, thundering off like a man in a huge huff, with the icy draughts of cold wind leaving with him, along with the suffocating, cloying heaviness that had moments before blanketed the room in a claustrophobic oppressiveness. In a trice the room felt light and airy again. The fire again crackled away merrily in the hearth. It was as if nothing had transpired. Even my fingers began to tingle with warmth. Farah woke up with a start. The noise of the front door slamming behind itself aroused her from her sleep. "Could you not have tried to open the door a bit more quietly? Why did you have to wake me up?" she moaned. "I was having such a magnificent dream. I was playing with these two kids from the 1800s. It felt so provocatively real, almost as if I'd travelled back in time. I was not taking any notice of Farah's strange comments. I was otherwise engaged in the emotional roller coaster of what had just transpired. It challenged everything I thought I already knew. It shifted my paradigm of the world in an instant. "It's so cold in here," Farah complained. "Why did you have to open that front door? Goodness only knows. I'm going up to bed," she declared. "I want to continue my lovely dream, so whatever you do, please don't wake me up, I beg you." For the best part of the night, I was restlessly apprehensive, struggling with bouts of sleeplessness, relieved by the pretty bird song of the dawn chorus in the early morning. I was awoken to Farah waking me up excitedly. "I had such an amazing dream last night. It was so exciting. It felt so real. I was a little girl in the 1800s, playing with my two friends. One was a little girl called Sarah. The other was a boy called William. We were having so much fun together, until the blooded Mr. Pepper, the angry, irate, drunken uncle, found us. He was beating our backs with his hands, as he could not find his whip. He was a horrible, horrible, nasty man, with a dreadful temper. His breath smelt of stale rum." When Farah referred to Mr. Pepper in her dream, that got my attention. I was curious, intrigued even. I wondered if the ghostly children in the cabin had somehow managed to communicate to her in her subconscious dream state. I chose not to say anything to her. I didn't want to scare her, but something outer-worldly was definitely going on in this cabin. It was freaking me out, as none of it made any rational sense at all. Imagine my shock when I noticed that as Farah began to get dressed with her back turned away from me against the wardrobe, I noticed she had 2 black bruises in the shape of handprints on her back, almost as if she had indeed been whacked by the rather nasty, vicious Mr. Pepper. This was beyond weird. "It's crazy," laughed Farah. "My back is aching. I think my dream made the pain of being beaten by that horrible man feel so real, almost as if it really happened." I decided not to scare her by making any commentary about the state of her back. As Farah went to the mirror to brush her hair, she applauded me for my great braiding techniques. "I never knew you could braid so professionally. You're a man of many talents." We sat down to eat a hearty breakfast together of bacon and eggs. That was when I decided to tell Farah about all the peculiar abnormalities that had been transpiring in the cabin. But as she tucked into her breakfast hungrily, she proceeded to tell me that I was the best boyfriend in the entire universe. Now that feels very good. That she was so lucky to have been whisked away to such a magical retreat like this. And it was so generous of me to bring her to such a charming little log cabin. I've always dreamed of staying in such a cosy cabin like this. I can't remember a time when I was this happy. After Farah's rapturous appraisal of the wooden cabin and of me, I didn't have the heart to tell her about my harrowing ghostly account from the previous night by throwing a spanner in the works and spoiling everything. I knew she was having such a wonderful time. I didn't have the heart to ruin it for her, so I chose to remain stoically silent. During the afternoon, Farah and I decided to take a brisk walk into the wooded area around the cabin, which to our amazement stretched back for many miles. Fortunately, it appeared as if there were many hiking trails for walkers and cyclists, all that were well marked. It was indeed a spectacular wooded oasis, with mature trees that towered into the sky like statuesque green giants, with thick voluptuous trunks, outstretched shapely branches, moving in the wind under a soft breeze, blowing like dancing ladies. The earthen-rich dark floor was richly strewn with thick carpets of crisp golden leaves. We could hear the warbles, chirps, whistles of all the birds, along with the crashing sound of the water hitting the rocks as the stream trickled and burbled through the woods on its meandering course. Even our feet began to crunch the crisp leaves beneath our rubber soles. We encountered a couple of captivating squirrels darting from one tree to another, watching us with a keen, curious interest, with bright, sparkling, mischievous brown eyes. We also ran into a chipmunk or two, and even surprised a mother doe with her pretty dotted fawn. Suddenly, Farah and I stopped dead in our tracks as we smelt the vilest, most disgusting odour. There are no words to describe how repugnant, vile, sour it was. It reminded me of a dead, rotting corpse. It was causing our nose to burn, our eyes to water, and the cutting bitter taste of bile to rise up in the back of our throats. "What is that ghastly smell?" asked Farah, looking at me with a perturbed expression on her face, wrinkling up her nose in disgust. "Do you think there's a dead animal lying around somewhere here?" Must be, I reflected, but try as we might, we were unable to locate the source of this nauseating smell. Suddenly we heard a loud, thunderous walloping sound as something very hefty and weighty was crunching the autumn leaves beneath sizable feet. Indeed, the movements were robust, sturdy, hefty, powerful, rather like something monstrously big, was rustling around in the thicket, like a rhino or an elephant, something very big. Farah looked afraid. I think something's stalking us. Whatever it is, it's very big. I knew Farah was absolutely right. I could sense that something appeared to be watching us with sinister, menacious eyes that felt like an electric drill boring into us like a hole in the wall. It left me feeling rattled, on edge. Yet the bizarre thing was that I saw absolutely nothing. "There it is," gasped Farah, her pretty blue eyes growing as wide as saucers. "I've seen the dark silhouette. It's of a giant man," she told me. "Over there. See there, through the trees. Can you see it?" I tried to focus on the spot where Farah was pointing. Sure enough, I saw a huge towering mass, a black humanoid-looking form, swaying backwards and forwards in the brush. Whatever in God's name this thing was, it was colossal. It was definitely watching us. "I'm so scared," whispered Farah. I think we should run." "No. Then it's bound to chase after us. Just walk faster and don't look back." This titanic being continued to size us both up, rather like a predator on the trail of a deer. Every hair on my body was standing on edge. My heart was thundering in my ears like a heavy drum. I really felt like a deer caught up in headlights. The ghostly, obscure, dark, shadowy figure moved stealthily towards us, like a cheetah in hot pursuit of its quarry. It was no longer shrouded nor concealed by the undergrowth. That was when I saw it, as it stepped out before me. It was a Bigfoot. I could hardly believe it. My heart leapt into my mouth. My body began to tremble like the choking energy of a stalling car. Every part of my body began to seize up, fall apart, lose its efficiency to perform in the way that it should. This Bigfoot was indeed the most terrifying, imposing, intimidating, powerful predator that I have ever beheld. Nothing could ever prepare me for such an encounter. The Bigfoot was not amused. His deep-set dark eyes wore an indignant, aggrieved, angry expression. He began to step up his speed, chasing after us. I was certain that we were going to die, but we weren't going to die without a fight. I was sure in my gut that we would never live to see another day, but I'm glad I was wrong. That was when I changed my mind. I told my girlfriend to run for her life, not to look behind her. I knew if she saw the Bigfoot, she would be paralyzed by fear, disabled, unable to move a muscle. I was struggling myself. My legs had become as heavy and stiff as blocks of cement beneath me. But slowly, surely, I managed to overcome the resistance. I was able to sprint back to the cabin as fast as I possibly could, hardly daring to believe that the cabin was now in sight. Once reaching it, we slammed the door behind us. I glanced to the nearest window to see if I could still see the Bigfoot. There it was, standing in the tree line that fringed the edges and boundary of the wood, only about 30 feet away from our cabin. I watched the creature closely through binoculars to see it more clearly. I discerned the hideously ugly creature. His fixed gaze was still on our cabin. He proceeded to beat his chest arrogantly, in a show of dominant aggression, as if to affirm who was boss. I noticed his thin lips rolled back to reveal large white human-like teeth. They glistened, twinkled, sparkled, became more intimidating by the second. A deep guttural growl emerged from the depths of his throat, which I could hear in the cabin. It finally morphed into a horrifying roar that caused the ground to vibrate. Every cell in my body began to shudder. Then with oversized arms he began to shake a massive old-growth cedar tree, as if it was absolutely nothing, while the branches began to quiver, tremble and snap under his monumental girth, strength and power. I ran around the cabin frantically, locking every door behind me as quickly as I could, diving for my cell phone, which was in my jacket pocket, to see if I could get a signal, but there was none. Just my luck, I thought. "Is the creature still out there?" asked Farah, looking at me anxiously. "Did you hear it roar? It was terrifying. I never knew bears could make a sound like that." "No, it's gone," I lied. not wanting to alarm her, but reassuring myself that neither of us would be leaving the cabin until first light the following morning. Before long, Farah was happily cooking away on the stove, making a delicious pot of spaghetti Alfredo. She seemed to have forgotten about our horrifying ordeal. She told me she was pretty certain that the humanoid form chasing us was a black bear, that we had got our knickers in a twist for nothing. That was what I liked about Farah, was her immense resilience, her willful reluctance to see anything negative, her inability to see the dark side of anything. "They can be very territorial, bears, you know," she said, "but they're actually not such bad creatures. But running from them, it's possibly not the wisest decision to make. My dad once told me not to ever run from a bear." "I think you were right," I lied. "I'm certain it was a bear." I crept out on top of the outside bedroom balcony to see if the Bigfoot was still there, but I'm glad to say it had completely disappeared. I was so relieved that Farah had not seen the terrifying beast. At a guess, the creature was about 9 foot tall, 4 foot wide on the shoulder area, covered with long flowing jet black hair. It was the ugliest, most demonical thing I've ever encountered, possessing the typical bullet-shaped head they often talk about, along with the deep-set dark eyes. Those eyes cut through me with such an intense hatred, like the sharpest arrow. That night, as I finally allowed my pent-up emotions to gain some reprieve, the horrors of the day momentarily were long behind me. I chose not to dwell on them, but to make the most of this break, with the idea of leaving this place at first light the following morning. After we'd eaten our spaghetti Alfredo, followed by a large dish of strawberry ice cream, I fell fast asleep on the cosy living room couch, beside the heat of a crackling fire, awoken suddenly to find myself hearing those ghostly children giggling again. I shut my eyes willfully, trying to block it all out. I certainly didn't want a reenactment of the previous night. Then I heard the ominous foreboding sound of those heavy boots thumping down the creaking staircase as if every step was weighted down by a heavy leg. Once again, like clockwork, the temperature of the room dropped substantially. An Arctic Siberian chill penetrated the room. It became icy cold. I shivered. Farah was still fast asleep, obliviously unaware of the outer-worldly anomalies that were transpiring before my eyes. In a moment of reckless courage, I decided to tell the ghost of Mr. Pepper to leave the children alone, which was the worst thing I could have done. I was flung to the ground by this powerful, forceful energy that seized me by my ankles with cold, invisible hands that burned into my skin like hot coals from a fire, only the burning sensation was much more cold and numbing rather than hot and searing. I was being dragged by my ankles across the wooden floorboards, kicking with my arms and legs, oscillating wildly like a spider with 8 legs. Finally, the entity released its hold on me. I could feel cold air circulating around my earlobes, prickling the minute hairs in my ear canal. Then I heard a disembodied voice, a male voice screaming the words, "Get out!" I shook Farah wide awake, telling her to grab her things, to get back to the jeep as quickly as possible. We threw everything into the trunk while I accelerated our jeep out of there as fast as we could, overcome with such terror, a terror that I cannot describe. I knew that Mr. Pepper would hurt us if we didn't leave at once. I felt it in my gut, in every fibre of my being. "What's going on? I was having such a lovely dream about those sweet 1800s kids again. Now you seem to be all fired up with anxiety for no reason at all." "It's that bear," I lied. "I think it's coming back." Farah laughed at me. "We're safe in the cabin. You shouldn't worry about that." "I'd rather get out of here." These strange events happened to me over 7 long years ago. I still haven't got my head around them yet. It really shook my view of reality wide apart. I was forced to conclude that the supernatural realm rarely exists, and the fictitious creature of fiction known as Bigfoot is indeed real. I did phone the woman who I'd rented the cabin from. She informed me that the cabin had been turned upside down, as if it had been thrust through a tornado, as even the sofas and chairs had been tossed all over the place. So it's a good thing we left when we did, for there is no telling what Mr. Pepper might have done to us. "Did you challenge the ghost?" she asked me, "because you made it very angry." I've never seen the cabin in such a dreadful state before. Everything was turned upside down. It was higgledy-piggledy. There was a number of breakages. I'm sorry, I said. I'll reimburse you for the damages. There's no need, she assured me. I asked the woman to elaborate about the ghosts on the property. She informed me that the two kids were called William and Sarah. They were adopted by their evil uncle in the 1800s, lived on that plot of land where the cabin was built. I gather that the evil uncle beat them so bad that one day he thrashed them to death. I believe he buried their bodies near the cabin. She explained that even in death the horrible monster of Mr. Pepper is still chasing after those poor children from beyond the grave. She did inform me that she called a priest out to bless the place, but he left the cabin in terror, refusing to ever come back, claiming that the ghost of Mr. Pepper had become exceedingly aggressive towards him. I am now married to my beautiful wife Farah, but I never told her about the Bigfoot I encountered, nor about the supernatural events that transpired while she was asleep. I thought it was better to protect her from those horrifying things that occurred in that beautiful log cabin, because they still traumatize me today. I do, however, believe that those two 1800s children did connect with her in her dreams in a remarkable, profound, and magnificent way. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what a fabulous story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.